there, welcome to Hollywood Breakthrough. I'm your host, Danielle Tillis.
Hi, it's Danielle with Hollywood Breakthrough, and we have a great guest today. Basically, a screenwriter's journey. We're going to have today Billie Jean VK on. She is a screenwriter. And hey, Billie Jean, thanks, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Great. Well, I just wanted to get you on the show because you are at that stage right now. You've been writing for quite a while, and basically want to make sure people are understanding your journey and see how to get to your level, the process for you to get to your level and what you've been doing. So basically, just want to get some basic information, how that kind of all started with you, like when you started knowing that you were a writer. Strong thing to be, a writer. So when was that the first love you knew?
Oh, wow. When I was a writer, when I was 12, I guess, one of my teachers, an English teacher, gave us a couple of creative writing assignments. And ever since then, I have been writing. I wrote prose back then, short stories. Some wrote a couple of plays, but I didn't switch to screenwriting until I moved to LA. I figured I'm in LA, so why not do screenwriting,
Right.
Especially since at that time I was going to be an actor, and I had listened to an interview with John Leguizamo, and he had said, if you are not the usual, ingenue or handsome young white person, you need to make your own roles. You can write. You have a great advantage because you can make your own roles instead of waiting for somebody else to make them. So that's actually how I got started in screenwriting, how I decided to start screenwriting.
Now, you went to college, correct?
I did.
Okay, so that was your major as well?
I had a very funny major. I have a liberal studies major, which is basically I have everything, kind of the beginning parts of any kind of performing, or I also did ceramic arts. And then I also have everything up until the actual nitty-gritty of a nursing degree. So I have arts and sciences.
Now, tell me some of the difficulties of being a female writer, a minority, and the process of trying to kind of find your voice.
Sure. I am, well, just in case people don't know, I am Black. And since they can't see. And so that has been an interesting journey for me in writing, especially in the last couple of months, because the discussion on getting more minorities, more diversity in writing, in screenwriting, has become stronger and stronger. It is, a lot of people are talking about it now. And my most passionate work at this time is it's based on a true story of Bass Reeves, who was one of the first Black U.S. deputy marshals in Indian Territory.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that, having that as one of my projects, it really did take me a long time to say, okay, it's okay that I have a male protagonist, because I really do want to make more roles for women, more roles for people of color, but sometimes it just doesn't fit into the narrative of the story. And my personal, I guess, crusade on holds for the betterment of the story. And that's been kind of hard in some of my other stories as well, until I finally just said, I need to just do what's best for the story. I need to not worry about if the person is Black or white or Asian or anything. I need to not worry about their sex or their sexual orientation, their disability, unless it has to do with the story. And people talked about it, kind of the matter I got, because I wanted to make a difference, but then I also want to be the best writer I can be. And to do that, I have to be free of the concerns of the world. I can't make everyone in the world. I can't right all the wrongs in the world with my writing.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, your website is BillieJeanVanKnight.com. Bass Reeves, what made you pick that particular time period and that particular person? What kind of drew you to that?
Well, that's actually kind of a funny story, because I I don't usually wake up in the middle of the night. Once I'm asleep until the alarm goes off or I wake up or whatever. But that time, I just woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I woke up and I could not get back to sleep. And I was like, what is going on? So I turned on the television and there was Charlie Rose with Morgan Freeman. And they were asking for someone to write a story about Bass Reeves. They were so passionate about this. Morgan Freeman was so passionate about this person named Bass Reeves. And so as a young screenwriter, just trying to make it, I'm like, oh, if Morgan Freeman wants something, why don't I go and make it? Which I was a little naive at the time. I thought, it'd take me 2 seconds because I was already a writer. I didn't realize that screenwriting is it's almost a different language than prose writing. And so I went the next day to the library. I looked up who in the world this Bass Reeves person was, and I became interested in him. I became more and more interested in who he was, what his story meant to me. I started watching a lot of Westerns to see. I was kind of a stereotypical woman in terms of not being versed in Westerns as much as other genres. And some of them I just really love. And I hope that the tone of Bass Reeves is almost a cross between Unforgiven, High Noon. I like that internal or not exactly internal struggle, but struggle with the people around you. And it's more about who's going to have your back and friendship and what you're willing to do to get the bad guy. And so those two really have an influence on my writing. I decided I was going to take a trip to Arkansas and Oklahoma, which is where his story is based, the main part of his life. Oklahoma used to be called Indian Territory. Part of our history as people in the United States is we moved the Native Americans from the East Coast, and the Trail of Tears basically leads to Oklahoma, called Indian Territory at the time.
Okay.
I went down there and I saw the jail, the Fort Smith. Fort Smith is a old fort that is where the U.S. judicial system basically ended there, because Arkansas was the line between Indian Territory and in the U.S. Arkansas was part of the U.S. and Indian Territory was free territory. There was no U.S. authority in Indian Territory because we had made agreements with the Native Americans to let them have that, to be sovereign nations, as very little places now are. We had told them they could be a sovereign nation in this Indian Territory. And what that did was that made a lot of our criminals from the U.S. travel into Indian Territory to escape the law. So a lot of the murderers, the rapists, thieves, they all went to Indian Territory because they couldn't be legally caught, because the Indians could not prosecute them and the U.S. couldn't come into Indian Territory and prosecute them. All that was really interesting to me. The more I learned about it, the more I loved the story, and I got very excited about it.
Like, how did your story take place with Bass Reeves then, with all that going on during that time period?
Mine's more because he was arrested for killing his cook, and it's really kind of an awful story when you get into it, because he had accidentally killed his cook 2 years before they arrested him. In my story, I don't have it as 2 years, because when I had put that in my script, people would tell me, well, that's unbelievable. Which is really funny, because a lot of the interesting parts of a human being's life are the unbelievable parts. They don't sound real.
Right.
So I have it starting a little bit before William Leach, who is the cook, is killed. And then I go into what happens to him after, and the struggles that he has with who he is and the people around him and how they treat him and what he knows about them and what they know about him, how they can treat him the way that they're treating him because he is Black and is not able to do anything about it.
Let's go back a little bit when you said the difference between, because you had, I don't want to jump too ahead, You said that there's a huge difference. You had to make a transition from writing to screenplay writing, because a lot of people who are writers, they're writers. They're writing books. They want to write. So how was that transition from being just a regular writer to doing screenwriting? What was the difference there?
Well, screenwriting is a lot shorter. I think if you write poetry, you probably will have a poetry or write songs, or even journalism is really good because they have to condense a story into a very short space. And that really is what screenwriting is. As prose writers, you're taught make everybody see everything, like put them in that situation, and you can go into people's heads. And then you can come back out again. You can tell things from other people's perspectives. You can kind of be like a god going into anybody's head at any time to know what they're thinking and to be able to write out what they're thinking, to be able to go into their past and say why they're thinking this. Whereas in screenplays, you have to do all this visually. There is voiceover, but you don't want to use that for everything. It's something that you want to use sparingly for certain reasons, but you want to be able to visually tell everything in a short period of time, because you want to be able to know who this person is by mostly visually, and how they react to things. You really have to study other people.
And the process for that for you, like, what's your process? One, is there a length for a screenplay has to be? There's a standard length it has to be, or that's kind of flexible? Sort
of flexible. Now they're saying anywhere from 90 to 120 pages is an acceptable screenplay length. They'd prefer it actually 110, but you can get away with 120. There's a standard screenplay structure that you can get screenwriting software that will do that for you. The biggest one is obviously Final Draft, but there's also new ones coming like Fade In, which is a lot less expensive if you're looking to start out, and it does everything that Final Draft will do. There's also some free ones that are on the internet as well. I haven't worked in those, so I'm not sure how they actually work in terms of how easy they are to use. But if you're just starting out, I think Fade In would probably be a good option for you, because you get everything, but at a less price, at a more inexpensive price. And then you can move up to Final Draft for production, because Final Draft kind of is the industry standard at this time.
Okay.
So you would need to have that if you are going into production or something. But right now, as a writer, you don't really need that. So basically, if someone who's just starting out, having Fade In it's decent enough to get you started. Is there any other tools that someone need, who are just starting out, who don't have a lot of money and they want to just, start doing this? Is there any other tools they need? There are a lot. Yeah, there are a lot of great resources for free, things that I wish I had available to me when I first started screenwriting. There is something called Go Into the Story, which is a blog written by Scott Myers, who is with The Blacklist. And The Blacklist is a really important thing. It's not the NBC show, but The Blacklist is basically how it started was once a year, all the agents, Franklin Leonard, who is the creator of The Blacklist, decided that he was going to ask all his manager friends, his agent friends, his producer friends, what was their favorite screenplay that they had read that year. It didn't have to be something that they had picked up to produce. It had to be unproduced at the time, but they might not have even been able to think it was producible, but it had to be their favorite script of that year. And so he got together with he has a whole bunch of contacts because he used to be with Will Smith's company as an executive, and he made a whole bunch of contacts, and now every year The Blacklist comes out, and it's a list. The Blacklist, if you're just starting out, may not help you very much until you actually have a finished script. The blog on The Blacklist, which is Go Into the Story, will actually help you out a lot. Scott is very prolific. Anything that you have a question about, he analyzes scripts, he interviews screenwriters. Every April, he gives you screenplay ideas. He does all sorts of things. The Blacklist online, that one now also has a component where once you have a finished screenplay, you can actually post it there to get it reviewed by industry professionals. But that does cost about $50 for a review if you want to review a paid for review by one of their readers, and then $25 a month to post your script on their site. But then it's free for any industry professional to look at.
Okay.
And they are really into mentoring screenwriters, helping them develop the process. They go through a lot of different things, everything from the union to how you go through production and things. There's the Children of Tindu, and theirs is also mostly mentors, but they are for television writers. And then there is the Nerdist Writers Panel, which is more of an interview style with people who are already successful in the industry, and mostly television writers. And the last one that I listen to on a regular basis, Austin Film Festival on Story, and that one is both television and screenwriters, kind of anyone who's been speaker at one of the Austin Film Festivals. And the Austin Film Festival is a great thing. If you can afford to go to Austin at the end of October and stay there for at least the 4 days of the conference, and because they have a conference and the film festival. If you can at least do that, you will learn quite a bit. Especially if you are getting further along in your screenwriting, it's definitely something that you want to make a priority to do, because you'll meet a lot of people and learn a lot of things.
How important is festivals for a writer or a screenwriter? How important is that? Is that really something people have to put on their list to do at least one time to make sure they...
Well, there's only one that is dedicated for screenwriters, and that is the Austin Film Festival.
Okay.
There are other conferences, like there's the World Screenwriting Conference and some other things. I've never been to those, so I would not be able to speak about them, but the Austin Film Festival is the only film festival that is dedicated specifically to writers. All the films are either produced by or directed by the writer. They have a conference that is all about writers. It is an extraordinary experience. And they also have a screenplay contest and a television screenplay contest. Let's see, Nichols is a really great one. Final Draft's Big Break is one. Austin Film Festival, that's definitely one. There's about 10 that are really big. And then there's also the things that are fellowships, like Disney has a fellowship for diverse writers, and Warner Brothers and all those things. They have fellowships. But I know that Scott on Going to the Story has discussed which contest to write into. Danny Manis on his website, which is nobullscript.net, he has that on his homepage as to which contests are the best contests to go into.
Okay.
So there's so many great, just go onto Twitter and listen, actually, because there has been some people who will go and ask everybody they know, like, for something, and you don't even know these people. They're strangers to you, and you're really annoying to them if you're just going around asking and not listening. So go on to Twitter. There's a great screenwriting community on Twitter. Every Sunday night, there is actually something called Script Chat. They also have a TV Writers Chat, which Jeannie Bauman does. She has some really great things. She's actually the person who told me to go on to Twitter as a resource. She has a really great seminar, online seminar that is about breaking into Hollywood outside of Hollywood. So if you're not living, because she lives in New York and I live in Minnesota. So she was really that seminar was very important to me because I used to live in LA. I worked at Warner Brothers and I did all that stuff. Then I came home to help my mom with my grandma, who has since passed away. But Jeannie Bauman she's also has a script that is very interesting to me and has actually had quite an influence on how I think of when I think about expanding the Bass Reeves story into a teleplay. I think about her journey on Slavery by Another Name, which is a book that she has the rights to and that she is writing the script for. Which is about peonage. And if you've never heard of peonage, which I hadn't until she brought this wonderful documentary into my life called Slavery by Another Name, which is something that happened between slavery and, because when slavery ended, everything was and there were no Jim Crow laws, nothing. Everything was equal. And then they realized that the economy was dying because they had all this free labor that suddenly was in the wind. and so everything kind of went topsy-turvy. And so peonage is bringing people in to like saying that they are criminals and forcing them to work for free because they are criminals. And also so then there was more like the Jim Crow laws, which made it easier and easier for Black people to become criminals. Yeah, so that has had a lot of influence on my development of the television show Bass Reeves.
Okay, so that's very interesting. Now, a little bit, you talk about your research for your Bass Reeves screenplay. What some of the research you have to do when you get started on writing? Is there a process that you have to go through? Are you staring at a blank computer screen or a blank paper?
Yeah, the blank page is the bane of the existence of all writers. Yes, for me, I usually will stick something on it just so it's not blank anymore and start from there. I'm not really a linear writer when it comes to screenplays. I'm very linear when it comes to prose, but when it comes to screenplays, I want to get down whatever scene or sequence is in my head at the time as most vibrant and easiest for me to get down on paper. I'll usually write that first. But before all that, there is outlining, which is another thing that I never did in prose, which is extremely important in screenwriting, is making sure you have all your ducks in a row, making sure that you have everything, that you know where your story's going. You know that you have enough interest in your story, enough interesting things happening in your story all throughout. You know that you have plot points, and I mean, you don't even have to say that they're plot points. You can just say something interesting happens at least every 10 pages, is kind of the standard. They say, every 10 pages something has to go bang. And that part for me is the hardest. That part for me is really whittling it down to what your story is and nothing else. Because even though other parts of the story may interest you a lot, you have to just really stick with the story in screenwriting and know whose story it is and what it's trying to say. And you can go through a lot of different changes in an outline and save yourself a lot of work and a lot of writing by doing that instead of writing it all out in the screenplay. Most of my other screenplays are actually thrillers and in one romantic comedy, which was my first screenplay, which we won't talk about because, like most people, my first screenplay sucked. And so don't be discouraged if your first screenplay sucks, because that happens to a lot of people. I don't think I really started writing really great screenplays until my 8th year of screenwriting. So don't give up. They say that you need 10 years and 10,000 hours in order to be great at something. And so, don't give up. Just as long as you're getting better. If other people are saying, oh, this is better than the last one, that's great. You're doing a great job because you will learn. If you're doing it, you're learning. I also see a lot of people who just sit there and they say, oh, like, all right, I have an idea and so it'll be great. But they don't write it. or if they do write it, they do one pass, and if it's not received well, they say, oh, well, that sucks then, and I'm going to move on. And you can't do that. You have to say, okay, what about it? What about it is hard? Or what about it aren't you understanding? Or what about it is boring? And when people give you that feedback, you have to take it. Sometimes it's hard to take that feedback, but you have to take it and really say, okay, well, I can take this and make it better. I can take this suggestion of theirs and make it better. Oh, I didn't even notice that before. Because a lot of the times when you are doing a screenplay, you start out with one thing, and then when you rewrite, you take out some things, and you may have taken out something that is really important, and like you don't even notice it anymore because you're almost blind to your own screenplay because you know so much about it that some of the details that you need for other people to understand, you can lose those details. And then they'll ask you, well, what happened? How did this happen? And you go back and you go, oh, yeah, that's right. I took that part out. And so you really need to go back and do that. So outlining is a really big thing. Any question that you have on screenwriting, there is John August has a screenwriting IO, and any questions that you have about screenwriting, the actual nuts and bolts of screenwriting, you can find there. So if you're having a hard time in the big search engines like Google or whatever, you can go to screenwriting.io and find, just type in your question and find answers.
That's a really great resource. I didn't know that even existed.
Yeah, it's really neat. I kind of became in awe of Scott Myers because he's such a nice, sweet guy. He also does this thing called The Quest, which he actually does for free for people. It's like a 9-month class for free. He takes out logline. Logline is basically a 1 or 2 page summary of your screenplay idea. And if he likes your logline, there's 15 people that he chooses once a year to do the quest. And I've taken classes from him before, and he is a very attentive teacher, gives some really great advice. Another person who is amazing at getting a story out of nothing is Danny Manis, the nobullscript.net. I've actually sat with him before while he was doing, because he listens to a lot of pitches. So I've sat with him before at the Great American Pitch Fest and listened to people pitch to him. And what he will do is he will listen to your pitch. I mean, they're just amazing at finding what's wrong with the script and not just saying, okay, that sucks, and moving on.
I think that would help a lot of people who are not even at your stage right now because, you've been doing it for 10 years. I mean, you were also part of a film called The Killer Movie.
Yeah. It showed on HBO. Not HBO, Showtime, I believe it was.
Okay.
It was an experience. I was assistant production coordinator on that one. I had just gotten back from LA. And a lot of the things, one of the reasons why I decided to come home and help my mom with my grandma is because she was having a really hard time doing it all by herself. And I realized that what I was doing in California was mostly writing, and that was something that I could do here. And also that California was LA entertainment scene was kind of making me a little crazy because I wasn't secure enough in myself at the time to deal with the jerks, I guess. I had been a casting assistant for an independent play, and the director, who is male, said he really wanted me to be in the room there was a character who was supposed to be a stripper, and so he just wanted to see them move a little bit. And so there was some music, and he'd usually play the music for, about 30 seconds and just see how they moved and then move on with whatever else there was going to happen in the casting. And there was one woman who was extremely good. She was good. I was like, wow, you go. And he just let the music keep on playing and keep on playing. And it was really uncomfortable for me. It was like he was having his own little happy personal time. And so I was like, okay, this is not okay. And so I turned around and turned off the music. And after she left, he started yelling at me and was like, I can't believe you did that. This is my thing. And I was like, you told me, to make sure that when these people, these actors who were auditioning for the stripper role, nothing weird happened, and that was getting weird. And he's like, well, you don't understand. This is my thing. And I said, okay, then thank you very much for letting me be here, and I appreciate it, and I think I'm going to go. And he's like, okay, thank you. And then we're like, well, I hope we work with you again. And we gave a kiss on each cheek. And I was kind of like an out-of-body experience where I was like, I can't believe I'm doing this. I never want to see this jerk again. And I'm so saying this Hollywood thing, like, oh yeah, we should work with you. And I couldn't believe I was doing it. So I found myself changing in those ways too. So I decided I need to step away and, for those reasons as well.
The great thing about being a writer, I mean, like you said, you can write anywhere. You don't have to be in LA. I mean, there's great writers in New York. There's great writers in the Midwest. I mean, you can be anywhere to be a writer and be inspired. And that's very important because a lot of people think they have to pack up their whole life, leave their jobs, leave whatever life they have to go to LA. And you can actually do things that doesn't necessarily mean you have to move to LA and still have a voice with your craft. And that's really important for people to really know.
Yeah, it definitely is. If you're older, especially if you're no longer in your 20s, then I definitely say, make sure that you have something going before you move, or if you have a family and a job and things like that, make sure you have something going before in LA before moving there. However, if you're in your 20s, I say do what I did. It's okay. Go out there because there are some great things that you can learn by going out there. I mean, you can find, like my best friend, I found her accidentally while I was working at Warner Brothers. And at first I started out because I just wanted to get on a lot. Because I wanted to learn. I wanted to get on a lot. So at first I was just a courier on the lot. I ended up moving up to studio operations. At first I was just a courier on the lot, and I actually met her when I was doing that, and one of the building managers. And I'm like, I have this screenplay. It was my first screenplay. And I have this screenplay and I don't know who I should have look at it. And he told me to have her look at it, and I had never met her before. She was just so sweet. She didn't want to tell me right off it sucked. And so she basically sent it through changed my name on it, which I am extremely grateful for, because they do keep records of the writer and, if that writer was good or not. She sent it through the studio readers. That poor reader had to read that script. And so she gets back, when the readers give back a synopsis, and it was horrible, the opinion that they gave, but it was great for me to know that. And I learned a lot from that, and we became really good friends. And so there's things that you can get in LA that you can't get anywhere else, like the hill. I had to go over the hill. I know what that means. It's just basically, it takes forever to get from the valley to, if you're going from the studios in the valley, like Warner Brothers and NBC Universal, to get to like the Paramounts and stuff, you have to go over the hill, which is kind of like, there's only a few ways to get from the valley over that Hollywood sign, mountainy. They call it the hill, but to me it's a mountain because I'm from the Midwest. But the thing that the Hollywood sign is on, that's called the hill. And to get from one side of it to the other, traffic is a nightmare. And so just things like that, just knowing things like that, and being able to talk to people about different things. And if you're going to be a TV writer, you really do have to move to LA. There's really no way around it because of writers' rooms and things like that, where all the writers have to be together. But if you're going to be a screenwriter, there's definitely ways around that. But if you can, go out there, because there's things that I really miss about being out there. The Writers Guild Foundation has a lot activities that you just can go to for screenwriters. And, it's just nice being able to have those events and those people around at any time if you can do it. So that is my pitch for going to LA, but you definitely don't have to. But if you can, do it.
Okay. Now, those are great tips for anyone starting out. And, basically I wanted to say thank you for coming on the show. You made some very interesting tips from takeaways for them. We're going to do your website as well. Just want to make sure people know it's BillieJeanVanKnight.com. The screenplay you're writing on is Bass Reeves film.
Yeah.
So we'll have that on the site.
Yes. On Twitter, I am at Billie Jean VK. So, and that's actually the easiest way to get me is on Twitter.
Let's get all your social sites real quick. So,
my Facebook is Billie Jean Van Knight, but basically I don't keep up with it as much as I should. So the easiest way to get to me is either the blog, just replying to one of my posts, or on Twitter. I usually keep up with both of those quite a bit. Okay, great. Up and coming screenwriters definitely get a lot of takeaway because they're not at your level yet. You've been doing it for 10 years, so you have a lot of experience. A screenplay be done, you think? Oh, it's done. I have entered it into the Austin Film Festival screenwriting contest. Well, it's quote unquote done. They always say, the screenplay is never done until they've shot it on set and the editor has gone through it and printed it. So I'm really proud of it. And now I'm actually looking more and more into doing it as a television show as well. So. And you also can find it on the Blacklist, it says as well. Is that correct? It had a little bit more shoot 'em up. And really wasn't the story. I think it was like I was talking about before, there's pressures that you feel and then you just have to say, no, I just got to go with the story. And I was kind of feeling that pressure of a Western, that there needed to be more gunfights, I guess. That really wasn't the story I wanted to tell. That's when I decided, okay, High Noon is what I'm going for. And High Noon, basically, there's nothing until the end, the big shootout at the end, but right. It's still an amazing movie. Right. Okay, great. And so they can find it on your blog of the script there, right? The first 3 pages or so? Yeah, I will. I guess I could just post the whole thing. That's really quickly. I just want to say, if you are afraid of other people stealing your stuff, you don't need to be. People, more than likely, especially if you are a new screenwriter, nobody wants to steal your stuff either. I know that sounds harsh, but really there are better things to steal. So, feel free of putting yourself out there because it's important. People need to see you. People need to know what you can do. What about the copyright of that and how people do the copywriting of their work? Is there a particular service you use? Yes. The Writers Guild of America I believe it's $20. I'll have to check, but for $20, you can have your script registered with the WGA. And so if something does happen, they will provide arbitrators for you. But there's also, if you are doing the work yourself and are not doing it work for hire, there is actual copywriting, which you should do. And that is with the U.S. government copyright office. It's really easy. It's $30. You just fill out a thing. Once you filled it out once with your name and everything, they actually keeps an account so that all your things will be in there. Okay. So a beginner scriptwriter would think possibly, you hear about people getting sued for, hey, that's my idea. I wrote that part of my movie. And even Tyler Perry had someone come up saying, so it happens a lot. So how do people protect themselves from that? And you're saying the copyright is the best way to do that? Well, yeah, the thing is that, yeah, people say that a lot, but that's not necessarily true. I'll give you a couple of examples. One is my first screenplay. It was a superhero romantic comedy. And the villain in it, when I would give it to people, they would say, Incredibles came out. They would say, have you seen The Incredibles? And I say, no. And they go, this villain is exactly like the villain in The Incredibles. And so I went and I saw The Incredibles, and physically he wasn't like him, but he basically, his motivations and everything were exactly the same. And I know that, Pixar didn't steal that from me. One, they have been working on it for 5 years or whatever. whatever. And, you know, some things are just in the ether. And other times things that people consider stealing is just ridiculous. You cannot copyright an idea. You can only copyright the execution of that idea. So, like, for example, if somebody has an idea of a TV show where there's a fake psychic who helps the police. Now, is that The Mentalist or is that Psych? They're two completely different shows.
Right.
And I'm sure nobody would say that one stole it from the other, or even if both of them, you know, if one said, oh yeah, I'm about a fake psychic who helps the police, nobody's going to say those two shows are the same. And the execution of the idea is the important part. I mean, because every single story has, you know, been written. They say there's only about 6 stories, you know, does it happen ever? Yes, but that's usually with really big people. I mean, more than likely, the things that people don't think about is what's really stealing your ideas. I mean, like, I see people go on to sites like Elance or Craigslist, and they find people looking for other people they'll say, the post will say something like, I have an idea for a script, write it for me. And what you're doing then is you're writing for hire. That other person owns every single thing that you have written. So if you create the next Matrix out of their one sentence idea, it's theirs. And that's more disturbing and more worrying to me, where you just gave up all your rights. That thing could make $20 million and not have your name on it ever. Those are the things that people need to worry about more. I mean, I've even seen people who refuse to go to a pitch fest because they think that the only reason the executives are there are to steal their ideas.
Because they don't have any of their own, so they're just getting people come in so they're going to get their ideas.
And that's not true. They don't have time for that. Well, I think a pitch fest can be helpful in terms of practice for learning how to pitch. If you don't have something that's finished and great, might not be the best place for you, but in terms of getting a return on your money. The Great American Pitch Fest, however, does have the first day, the Saturday, is all free classes. They do have a couple of master classes that you can pay for, but the first day is all just free classes. So you can go and just learn. And that's amazing. You know, that's always good. Pitch Fest part, if you actually hope to get somebody to buy your work or get an agent or something out of it, then you definitely would need to have something great. When I went, I got 6 requests to see my script, and that was a very high percentage. And so that was really nice. Just like acting, it's a lot of rejection. Any creative field, actually, there's a lot of rejection, but then there's also a lot of great reward in doing what you love.
And you talk a little bit about rejection a little bit. We didn't discuss that, but how do you handle rejection? Because it does happen a lot in your industry.
For me, rejection hurts, but it's not as devastating as it is for some people, because to me, I know that maybe because of the things that I've had in my life, the problems or the events that I've had in my life, I know that it's not me, it's the work. You know, they might like me, but not like the work. But I know that if one person doesn't like me, that it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person or anything like that. And you have to kind of say the same thing with your work. It's like, okay, well, if one person doesn't like that, that's okay. And you also have to say that they are not just saying they don't like it but actually you're the greatest thing on earth. Because sometimes rejection can be the best teacher, especially if you get people who are they're not just rejecting you, but giving you feedback. And those people are great, because the people who give you feedback are, even if they're not saying anything that will help exactly, sometimes they don't know how to say it. So if you ask them a question, say, why did you say this? and don't say it in a mean way. Don't get all huffy about, or you're a man and you don't get that women do this or whatever. You want to just say, okay, why did you say this? And it might just be the execution of the order of the things. It's like, maybe if you had said this first, I would have understood this, or maybe, to me, a rejection is a way to find out what is wrong with it. It's a way to help understand. It's a way to let people give you more information, because it could be great. It could, especially if what they're saying is something that is fixable, which is great. If they can actually tell you something and you can brainstorm it before responding to somebody's, I'd like to wait a day before responding to somebody's notes, because some of my, visceral reactions might be, oh, those stupid people, they don't know what they're doing. And then once I think, then I go, oh, okay. Well, yeah, they're right. I could do this better. So you always have those feelings, because, it's, especially if you're doing it right, it's something that you're passionate about. And so you always have those feelings when somebody doesn't think it's as great as you do. But to use what they have to say to make it better is a gift. And it's not something that you should feel bad about or take personally in terms of, you're not worth doing this, or you are not a good writer, because it might just be that one day, that one thing.
Right. A couple of things I want to bring up is that how do you keep going? I mean, what makes you to say and not putting the pen down? What keeps you keep going? Like, I'm going to keep doing this. I don't care. It takes me 20 years.
Passion, that's it. I mean, there have been times where, like, even with the Bass Reeves thing, I've said, okay, I hate Bass Reeves now. I never want to see him again. I have actually put him in a drawer for a year. You're getting on my nerves. I just don't want, I can't look at you again. I can't, I have no more ideas, everything. And then something will happen in my life and I'll go, oh, what about this? And all of a sudden you start up again and you want to do it. And so if you have something that you're passionate about, you can do it. You can do it forever. And like, if you have something that, because for me, writing, like for a while, I had to give up writing because of my disability. I have actually 2 different autoimmune forms of arthritis. And for a while, it was really bad. And I actually broke my back, and I didn't realize, because I fell and I didn't realize I had fractured my back in 3 different places, and I didn't know the difference between the pain. And so I had been on some drugs that were not really great for me, and I was no longer able to read or drive or do anything like that, and I was not able to write. And so I've been through that part of my life, and I realized that writing is a huge part of me. And when I was not able to do it, when I was not able to read or write, a part of me was dying. And my body felt great on the drugs, but I actually said, no, I need to be able to do that for my mental health, for me to be alive. I need to do that. Now I'm a lot better. I went to the Mayo Clinic, spent some time there, and they really helped me. And so now I'm a lot better. But that was just really something, if you can do anything else and love it, I think kind of have to be passionate in order to deal with the rejection, deal with other people determining your fate. Because especially screenwriting, it is yours. Your script is only the beginning. Your script is only the blueprint for the building. There are actors and directors and producers and everything that will then take your script and do whatever they feel is best with it. And so it may not look like what you had thought it was going to look like in the end. And that is something that you have to say, well, the writing of it was what I wanted to do. The writing of it was worth it to me to not have everything be exactly like I want it. The writing of it is where my heart is. And that's really important.
Wow. And you said you went through a lot. That's a huge obstacle to go through. How long ago was that? November
is when I have no longer needed to use my walker. So I went through about 5 years of hell. But that also has taught me I think that's also one of the reasons why I consider a lot of the stuff that I do a lesson is because, like I always say, I made the mistake of asking God to let me learn all my life. And I thought that I was saying, oh, I get to go to college and, be a scholar and things like that and learn and do things like that. And instead, what God said was, okay, you want to learn? Here you go. And I have learned more about myself and more about other people than I could possibly imagine because you learn who your friends really are. You learn what you can take and what you can't take. What's really important in your life and what's not. You learn to accept not being, and it's still really hard for me to accept not being in control, where I was not in control of my life. And that is a very humbling experience. You learn, there'd be times where I would be very tired or whatever that day, and I just wouldn't want to talk to anybody or do anything, but I would get up and go and I'd say, okay, fine, I'm going to go out to lunch this day. And when I did that, all the handicap spots would be full. And so I wouldn't be able to go inside because I could not make it those few extra feet. And so things like that, you learn how you and the rest of the world are connected and what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. Like for me, the pain was fine, but not being able to write or read was not fine. My mental health was much, much more important to me than the physical pain. I could deal with the physical pain. I could not deal with the mental.
Wow, that is amazing. I feel like, that story, what you're saying. That probably is touching so many other people who have the same probably issues. There's a lot of people who are probably handicapped and they can't, write and they want to write. So the fact that you were able to find something inside yourself to kind of keep going, and that was important to you. And I don't think, you asked too much for God by saying you want to learn, because you are a writer. And so what's the best tool for someone who writes is to give them so much experience that they can write about it.
Well, yeah, I know that now, but that's not what I would have chosen. That's not what I would have chosen. If God was like, are you sure? I would have been like, no, that's okay. Thank you. Now that I'm through it, it's, it's fine. I realize that it was a gift, but it's made my life better. And
you've been through so much. That's the idea. You go through a lot of hard knocks, the struggle. This is real. A lot of people are not even at your level, and they are having the same types, because I think people have same experience in a sense, but it's different in some ways. People go through, death and physical problems and mental problems and things like that, and they are passionate about their craft. These are things that will happen for you to get through to see what you're made of. And it seems like you've been through a lot, and you can see what you're made of, and that's important. The best part about it, you just kept getting up. No matter how bad it got, you just still kept getting up, and that's real important to a lot of the listeners to know, that to keep getting up, keep going after your craft, whatever that craft could be, writing, acting, directing. Find your craft, keep that craft, and just keep going through it, regardless of the negativity, regardless of the obstacles, the struggles, and even yourself. People have their own negative chatter that goes on to their head about not being good enough. Yeah. And you have to get through that somehow.
Yeah, you definitely do. That can be actually the hardest. Yourself can be the hardest critic. Everybody, as I think everybody knows, because no one can hurt you like people who know you, and no one can hurt you like yourself. Closer you are to somebody, the more you can hurt somebody. Well, you don't want to be poor all your life, so don't write because you're going to be poor. Maybe you're only going to be poor for a little bit while you're getting yourself together, or, whatever, but, they're scared for you. And sometimes people take that to heart. And sometimes, depending on who you are, maybe that you should listen to them, but maybe not,
That negativity, because someone else is telling you their fear, because that's their fear, and they're reflecting that fear of themselves because they know they couldn't do it. they reflect that and push that fear onto you and say, it's going to be hard for you because I couldn't do it. So there's no way you could do it. And people will put that on someone saying that it would be hard for them. So I know you wouldn't be able to do it at all.
Yeah. Exactly. And people do that a lot, and people do that a lot with the people that they love. And you really have to know yourself and say, can I do this? And maybe you can just try and do it for a little bit. Maybe, just because it's kind of like if you have any kind of job, like say, because I know somebody who had gotten laid off from a job and they refused to get another job until they got what they wanted. In the meanwhile, everything is starting to go, and just because if you take that job for that little bit, that does not mean that you have to stay it and that you're going to be 70, no. And then the next day, whatever is happening will come. So there are times where you have to say, okay, well, I'll just try this for a little bit and see if it works. Then it's not about fear. It's about what you know. It's about, that you don't like that. You thought you would, but now that you've done it, that, and so you'll have no regrets whatsoever because you know what you know. That sounds weird.
No, I understand that. I call it the wrong chatter in your head. What do you say to yourself that you're not good enough?
Oh, yes. Oh, Lord, yes.
What are those things you say to yourself and what do you do to overcome that?
Facts, actually. Because sometimes your brain, when I was having, the issues with my body and everything, things got so bad that, I needed to have somebody to ground me. So I would say, and for me, a lot of it was other people that helped, continue to bring me up. A lot of it was just something as simple as the exercises of saying, no, those are not the actual facts, because sometimes, this or that. And so I'd say, so you have to say, okay, well, what are the real facts? Don't rely so much on what you're thinking as opposed to what the actual facts are, because sometimes I know what's at stake for me. I know that it's not going to be as bad as I think in my head it'll be. And even if it is, I say 95% of the time, it's not going to be as bad as you think it's going to be. And a lot of the times you thinking about what's going to happen is a lot worse than actually doing it and finding out what's going to happen. So you got to risk, sometimes it feels like the cliff is 100 meters high, but really it's only a meter high. And if you jump, it's okay.
And you try.
Yeah. I look at what it really is and I say, okay, well that is not what I'm really thinking, because that's what I'm really, what I'm thinking is not necessarily true. But if I don't try it, then I am never going to know if it's going to work or not. The risk reward, if the risk is just somebody saying no, well, then go ahead and try. Then they say no, like
you said, some people start wanting to write and then they have that fear when people say, you don't want to be poor, you want to do this. So get a real job. So you go out there and get that real job, and then you still have in the back of your head, you really want to write. And then as you get older, you realize, you know what? I have one life to live. I'm going to be an actor, or I'm going to write, or I'm going to be the director. So what about that older person, and they still want to pursue this type of career, such as being a writer, being a screenwriter? What is something that you can tell them that you wish I told you to keep you going?
Well, I think it depends. Like I said, the risk is really depends on, like, if you have children and a family, you are deciding something for them too. So you can't say, I'm going to live on ramen noodles for the next, even if, because I'm 36, but I don't have any kids. So if I decide, okay, well, I'm going to not have anything to live on for the next, whatever, for the next month or whatever, then that's one thing. But this first see, what are your responsibilities? What is going to happen? Who are you going to be affecting? Right. Once you've done that, once you realize, okay, it's fine, I can, and if you have a family or something, then go ahead and try and make your own movie where you are. You know, there are options. You can still do the same thing, but just do it smarter. Do it locally. Do it still right. You can still act, you know, act in a community around your area. You know, if you're writing, write. And there's a place called stage32.com, which is starting to be more and more local people. They have people from all over, and there will be more and more people in your area trying to do the same thing. Like, there'll be people looking for somebody to make a movie with. They'll say, I'm shooting on, you know, the 15th is in, you know, who's available that day. I need a lighting person. I need an actor, you know, I need whatever. And, you know, so for on the weekend, say, okay, well, I'm going to be a writer, director, and everything. You can do that right where you are and still be moving forward. Enter it into competitions. You might get picked up from that. So the risk isn't, you're not jumping off that 100-meter platform. You're jumping off, you know, the 10-meter or something like that. And so the people around you won't be as affected. But if you can, yes, you have dreams, but you also have responsibilities. If you can do both, that's great, and that's amazing. And you can do both. You know, you just do it responsibly. You write a short instead of a feature and film the short. But then do it. Don't be afraid. Do it.
That's a great way to end our segment. Don't be afraid. Just do it. Thank you so much for coming on Hollywood Breakthrough.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it was fun.